If you're someone that needs lots of bass from your car's sound system, today's episode is a must watch. We're diving into when and why to upgrade your vehicle's alternator to get the most out of your audio system. So stay with us. Hey, what's up? Josh here from Breaker Stereo and Performance. Welcome to our channel that reviews all the best in car audio, performance, suspension, and more, because we don't drive stock. And if you're like us, where stock just doesn't cut it, make sure to subscribe to this channel. You should start considering upgrading your alternator if your bass amp is about 1500 watts or better. Now, if you're running a 2 amp system with the bass amp under 1500 watts, in most cases, you're gonna be okay. Now, not to say that if you do upgrade your alternator, you won't get better performance from your system, because you will. I'm just saying that it may not be worth the investment in time and money. That's a broad stroke general rule, but let's say you have a 2002 Honda Civic where the audio system is worth more than the car, with a 1200 watt amplifier on the stock 70 amp alternator, then you might want to look into a higher output alternator. Listen, if you're spending thousands of dollars on an audio system, a few $100s is definitely going to be worth it. Now, if you have an existing system and you're encountering issues like your bass cutting out, there are steps you can take to diagnose if you need an alternator upgrade. First, make sure you have a good ground for the amplifier. And two, you can conduct a voltage test at the amplifier. Okay, so let's start with making sure you got a solid ground. Here's how to make sure your ground is good. Now grab a meter and remove the ground at the battery. Set it to ohms on the meter and get a long enough wire to extend the black lead on the meter to where your grounding point is. Now attach that wire, one end to the black lead of the meter and the other end to the red part of the meter, and make note of the resistance. Now attach the extended lead to the wire that you just pulled off the battery and put the red lead on your grounding point. We're looking for the least resistance as possible, so we want to get close to zero. Now be sure you're factoring in that existing resistance we just tested, and we want to be at 0.1 or 0.2 after minusing that resistance. If it's more than that, then you might want to look for another grounding point. But if it checks out, then you'll want to do a voltage test at the amplifier. Here's how to do that. Make sure your car is running for this test. Grab your meter and set the DC voltage. Put the positive lead on the amp's positive terminal and the negative lead on the negative terminal on the amp. Now play your music and see how low the voltage drops when the bass cuts out. If it's falling below 12 volts, it's likely time for an alternator upgrade. But before that, make sure you've done the Big 3 upgrade. If you haven't done it, here's how to do it. Big 3 upgrade. You'll need 3 wires, 2 grounds, and 1 power. All the same gauge, 4 gauge or better. Use OFC or 100% copper. Also, these 6 ring terminals that'll go on the ends of each wire. Now, we're not replacing the factory wiring, we're adding to it, so keep that in mind. Whenever working on a car's electrical system, disconnect the ground. Step 1, strap your power wire cable to the positive side of the alternator to the positive side of the battery. Step 2, strap one of your ground wires to the negative side of the alternator to the chassis ground. Just follow where the wire runs down to the ground point. Scrape off any paint or debris if needed. And step 3, strap the other ground to the negative side of the battery and follow it to the ground point. Reconnect the negative on the battery, and that's it, you're done. So let's say your ground is good, you've done the Big 3 upgrade, and the voltage on the amplifier runs well below 12 volts, then look to upgrade your alternator. Now, some of you might be saying, just add an additional battery, which you can do, but we advise to upgrade the alternator first, and then add the battery. Here's why. Adding another battery increases stress on the existing alternator, potentially not resolving the bass cutting out issue. The alternator, on the other hand, provides more amperage, acting as a better power source. An additional battery, in this case, functions more like a reserve, similar to a capacitor, relying on the alternator for charging. If the battery charges low on that secondary battery, it won't supply sufficient amperage for the system during low bass notes. Okay, so here's how to determine the size of the alternator you'll need in these 3 easy steps. Number 1, determine the amperage output of your current alternator. Number 2, calculate the amperage drawn by your amplifiers at music level. And then 3, do the math to figure out the required alternator size. Okay, number 1, how many amperes does your current alternator put out? Okay, if you simply Google your year, make, and model and alternator, replacement ones will pop up. Just click around and see what the output is on those. Number 2, how many amperes of current do your amplifiers draw at music level? Okay, to determine this, take a look at your owner's manual or on the website of the company that makes your amplifier. Normally, under the specifications, you can find the recommended fuse size, along with the current draw. Now, if they list the average music current draw, then use that. If they don't, just take the recommended fuse size, or if you can't find that, just look on the side of the amplifier and add up the fuses. Now, once you have that number, you're gonna wanna take 50 to 60% of what the amplifier needs. So let's say it's a 100 amp fuse. Use 60% of that, so 60 amperes. Now make sure you account for all the amplifiers you have, including the amplifier for the mids and highs. And 3, do the math. Take the alternator output and add the amperes drawn at music level for all the amplifiers. All right, so let's take the example of the 2002 Honda Civic. Let's say with an Alpine S2-A120M, that's 1200 watts times 1. And let's say you're using the Alpine 4-channel S2-A32F, that's 60 watts times 4. So if you look on the side of the amps, you have 4 25 amp fuses on the base amplifier, that's 100 amperes, and a single 40 amp fuse on the 4-channel, equaling 140 amperes. Let's be on the safe side and take 60% of that number for our musical current draw. So that's 84 amperes. Add the 70 amperes that the current alternator puts out with the 84 and we get 154 amperes. So get something around that number. I would recommend something a little bit above, so 160 to 180 amp alternator is something that will work good for this install. Now we recommend going with jsalternators.com for quality and high output alternators. This is our go-to company because they are direct replacement alternators, easy to install, and they offer high output alternators up to 400 amps. Also, you can custom powder coat your alternator for an additional charge. And as a bonus, they've offered to give our viewers an additional 5% their already discounted prices. Use discount code JS5. Okay, that'll cover it. Hopefully we answered all your questions and concerns around when you need to upgrade your vehicle's alternator. If you found this video useful, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons and stay tuned to our channel for all your car audio needs. Also, make sure to visit our website at breakerstereoandperformance.com. Again, my name is Josh. I'm with Breaker Stereo and Performance. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.